Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video all about the League of Dracula 2024. And this is another one of my sort of roundup analysis videos where I tell you everything, well, not everything that's happened, but give you a basic summary of what's happened over the last few weeks of the tournament and what is happening next, or what's happening right now. I do apologize, I did mean to make this video earlier in the week, but time kind of ran away from me a little bit and could only get around to it today. But better late than never. So I want to let you know everything that has happened, because especially now that the league phase has ended, I want to show you the final table of results and things, especially for those of you who are not in the Discord community and haven't seen it. So on the screen, you'll see the league table that I showed you probably like 4 or 5 weeks ago at this point, which is at the end of the second phase of the league, so basically halfway through the entire league part of the tournament. Everyone had played 8 games, and these were the standings. These 8 games were everybody had 4 games as hunters, 4 as Dracula, and the opponents were determined purely by random sort of draw. There was no seeding involved or anything like that. So everyone played against 4 different players, once as hunters, once as Dracula, and this is how the table all looked at that point. The reigning champion Pizza was at the top. I was inside the top 4. With 6 wins out of 8, which honestly I would have taken. If you'd told me that after, before the tournament, after 8 games I would have had 6 wins, I would have, absolutely accepted that. Especially not playing a huge amount over the last year or so, and the Immortal Invitational, our previous tournament, wasn't the best for me. So I would have taken that to be in the top 4. And the reason why the top 4 players here are in a different color compared to the rest is just because of the way it works out for things later in the knockout stages. I'll explain that later on. But the important thing is for everybody was to try and get inside the top 12. You get inside the top 12, you're guaranteed to be in the knockout stage, or the knockout sort of part of the tournament. And so it's only places from 13 to 18 that would get eliminated. Just a quick recap, just in case you weren't, haven't been involved in watching the league, or you didn't see the previous, video I did. This tournament's very different from the ones we've previously done for the League of Dracula. Instead of distributing everyone into lots of little groups, and then the best players from which proceed into the final league, we've done it where everybody's results, everyone's results get collated and then put inside one massive league table. So you can actually see now your ranking relative to the whole, the whole player base, all the participants, not just inside your own little mini group. And it means, in theory, you should get a greater diversity of matchups. But just because there were only 18 players, then there were some players who had to play against each other sort of multiple times throughout the league. But everyone seemed to enjoy it nonetheless. So what I'll do now is I'll skip forward to the league table at the end of the third phase. So 4 more games would have been played by that point. The first 8 games were done by random draw, but the next 4 games were based upon league position. So the way we would do it is the top 3 players would have to play against each other, 4, 5, and 6 would have to play against each other, and so on. So this was done to try and sort of counteract the randomness of the first half of the league phase. If there's some people who maybe had an inflated position in the table because their draw for the random phase was in theory easier, quote unquote. Not there's any easy games these days in the community, but if you had a slightly easier draw, then you'd be compensated by giving, you'd have harder opponents in the second half of the league. Whereas then people at the bottom, if they felt their position towards the lower part of the league was a little bit unjustified, then they would play against people of a similar ranking to them, so they'd have a chance to then try and catch up. That's the case. And then same with people in the middle of the table. Could they stay there, or is someone going to make a push for the the top of the table, or fall down towards the bottom? So yeah, this is how the table looked then after 12 games, and the arrows show you how people have shifted. Pizza Wizard still at the top, reigning champion. I think, where was Snuff at that point? Okay, so the top 2 were the same at that point. My third phase wasn't too bad. 3-1, and now 3 wins under my belt. So I managed just to sneak into the top 3 for the final phase. The awesome battles between Strider and Skybreaker. They played each other, I think it was in the first phase, and then they had to play against each other in the third phase, and they had to play again in the fourth phase as well. So they were getting used to playing against each other. Fifth and sixth place, 7 wins each. Especially very good. I mean, good for both of them, of course. But Strider being new blood champion, and also Skybreaker hadn't really played for about 18 months. Really, on a regular basis before this. Did compete in the European Championship back in the spring of 2023. So it's really good to see a player come back in after a long time without playing regularly and doing really well. So great to see. Lots of familiar names in there. The four newer players who had joined for this tournament were towards the lower part of the table, but given sort of the experience sort of disparity between them and the rest of us, that's not maybe a huge surprise. But because of the nature of the way that this league was structured, it still gives them a chance to catch up. Right, because if they're stuck inside like a small little group, they could maybe lose the first even half of their games, and they'll realize, oh, I can't even qualify, right? So it's the games for me are meaningless. Okay, obviously, in theory, games should be meaningless because you're wanting to learn and improve yourself. But in this way, they're playing against then people who have similar ranking to them and maybe then potentially similar experience, but then you still got a chance to try and catch up. So at this point, Terminus was the one new player who was just inside the top 12. They got the other new players in here as well, and they also got experience with Geo and Burke Marley and Worm Talon as well, who could also cause a lot of issues for them in the third and then fourth phase. And then everybody at this point, almost everybody could still make it into this top 12 position, right? So it was great to see that, right, 3/4 of the way through the league phase, and it was still very uncertain who was going to qualify in the top 12 out of all of these players, which is great. The reason why we've got two named here is because unfortunately Hero 1 dropped out. So an experienced player, JB Philly, who said beginning was a little bit rusty, hadn't played a huge amount recently, but still was able to sort of take their place, and then just meant that the players around them got an actual human opponent to play against rather than having to give award forfeited wins and all that sort of thing. That's why the two names are there. And then if we proceed into the next phase, so this is how the final league table finished, right? So a lot of shifting around. There's a lot of drama, all different parts of the table. That's the thing I kind of really appreciated about this format. I think it was something on the lines of we only had about 5 games total still to be played, and most of the positions in the league were still not finalized, which is amazing when you think about it. Like, there was 144 games in total across the entire league phase, and you're saying that after about 100, 138, 139, so over 90% of those games, or even more, and you still don't know most of the final positions of the players. It's just fantastic, right? And you also see how close it was between everybody. So there's a really tight battle at the top. Pizza Wizard just got ahead of me. I won 3 games in my final phase, but so did Pizza Wizard, so that was just enough to stay ahead. I had a higher medium Buckholz score. So if you don't know what that is, that's basically our tie-breaking. There are 2 tiebreakers. You're ranked based upon the number of wins, but then there's medium Buckholz and IDS. IDS is an in-game metric. It's a calculation based upon the amount of influence that you gain as Dracula, or you gave up if you're the hunters, if that makes sense. And then also then Dracula's final health. But medium Buckholz is a calculation that you need for Swiss-style sort of leagues and tournaments, because it's not like a round robin where you play against everybody, because you're only going to play a sample of all the players in the league. It doesn't matter if there are 18 players in this league or 30 or 50 or whatever, you only play a sample of them. So because you haven't played against everybody, you have to have some sort of mechanic to work out who had slightly harder fixtures compared to other people. So basically, the median Buckholz is a calculation of the total number of wins that all of your opponents have obtained across the entirety of the tournament. But then you minus the one iteration of the top ranking player if you had to play them multiple times, and then the bottom ranking opponent. So it's the medium. So basically, the medium Buckholz for me, 61 points. That means that the middle 6 opponents I had to play against obtained in total 61 wins between them. So yeah, mine is particularly high just because I ended up having to play against a lot of really tough. I mean, as I said, all the games are going to be tough. But when you look at the final rankings, I had to play against Pizza Wizard twice, albeit one of them is discarded because he was my top ranking opponent. I had to play against Fangs once. I had to play against Mr. Green in 2 phases. I had to play Snuff in the final phase. And then Geo also was one of my opponents who qualified as well. So all of my opponents, which are counting towards this medium buckles, made it into the top 12, and looking at 4 of them are inside the well, technically 5 because Mr. Green counts twice, are inside the top 5. So that's why mine is higher. So I had a higher medium buckle. So in theory, I had a slightly harder competition than Pizza Wizard, but Pizza Wizard got the wins, and the wins are what's the more important thing. Ideas really close. It all came down to the final game between Pizza Wizard and Snuffleupagus to work out who was going to finish third, because Pizza Wizard managed to win that one. Snuff unfortunately didn't manage to stay inside the top 4. But then good news for Fangs of Fire and Mr. Green, who were then staying inside the top 4. But only one win. Well, it's not even one win. It's basically Snuff had the higher IDS, so it was just medium buckles that kept Mr. Green inside the top 4. New Blood Champion Strider stayed in 6th place, very good stuff. Quincy Morris, of course, very experienced, was also there on 9 wins. So still really close. 3 players ended up on 8 wins. And you can see it's just medium buckles. It's even, with just 1 medium buckles point separating Skybreaker and Ariel. Really, really, really close stuff. Spencer had the better IDS, but, based upon, in theory, the ranking of the opponents that he played against, finishes in 10th rather than 8th. And then if you look in the, for the final spots in the top 12, there are 3 players all on 7 wins. But it was Terminus, new player, fantastic to see, and Gio, my Immortal Invitational teammate, who made it through, beating out, basically JB Philly at this point with better medium buckles, not better IDS, but better medium buckles. That's all that mattered. But JB Philly did say, because he was replacing Hero 1, if JB Philly won enough games and made it into the top 12, he wouldn't have competed in the knockout phase. So Terminus and Gio would have been safe even if JB Philly went up to 11th, but still. And then even like you can see in here, like Randiv, Wormtalent, Ondrazar all finishing on 6 wins, only 1 win away from the knockout places, and then Burke Barley very experienced as well. Langeneck managed to get a win in phase 4, I believe, as well, so finished off the tournament on a good note. So you can just see how close it is, and like there is a spread across the whole community. That's kind of what you'd expect, but still is really really close going, and most of the places in the league are only being separated by 1 win, or even then looking at just medium buckles, right? So it's really, really close competition between everybody. The fact that people were playing their final 8 games from the 3rd and 4th phase against people of a similar ranking to them really gave a lot of importance to those games. It doesn't matter where in the table you were, because you knew that if you won one of those games, not only are you winning against a close rival, but your close rival is losing against you. So you have a big advantage. That's why we did see quite a few sort of, a lot of position changes. One person might win a game, and then as we were updating the table behind the scenes, you'd see that person jump up several places just with 1 win. So it's fantastic to see. But this is how the league, finished after 16 games. If we played one more phase, would it have stayed this way? Probably not. There'd been more movement around, but we said it was going to be 4 phases, 2 random, 2 based on rankings. So this is how it all finished up. So yeah, just exciting stuff all around the table. I think that's the cool thing about it, right? You had games of real importance at the top of the league, in the middle, and then also towards the lower part. And even then, right, even if towards the end certain players knew that they couldn't qualify for the knockout phases, the games are still really exciting because they're against players of similar position and experience and ranking, and the games were just all really, really fun to watch. There wasn't one game from any part of the table that I watched and went, ugh, that was a dud, right? They're all really exciting. Especially like the very last game that got played across the 144th game out of 144 was between Ondrazot and Langeneck, 2 new players, and the banter between them was great. There's a really sort of friendly and vibe and atmosphere, and it was just great fun to watch. And that's what you want to see, right? So even if for the 2 of them, the tournament might not have gone as well as they hoped or wished, I hope they, I really hope that they enjoyed themselves the way they were, connecting with each other and talking to me as the sort of the spectator and streamer there, and talking to each other. It was just really good fun, and really, really, really good attitude. So yeah, it's the format has done its job. There are problems with this format in terms of if you do have somebody dropping out, it does cause quite a bit of crisis because it affects everybody rather than just affecting one group, and you can isolate it into one group. But there's the sheer sort of there's less immediate jeopardy because you don't get eliminated as quickly, but that gives more time for people to gain experience, and if they're maybe a bit rusty, they can get better towards the end of the tournament. Um, but and also then it's just you know every game has a lot more meaning now, right? And every game is fascinating. So I think it did its job. I really like this league format. It has issues in as I said, for people dropping out and stuff, but um, I thought it was a really enjoyable format. But that's maybe a bit biased. I'm seeing it from the admin's perspective. Hopefully, people who have, if anybody's watching this and you're in the tournament, feel free to leave comments below if you enjoyed this format or not. But of course, once the tournament is done completely, we'll have to talk about, do we do this type of format again? Do we change it for the next year? We'll have to see. So anyway, so the way it works is out of the top 12 players, they all go through to the knockout phase. The top 4 players receive a bye to the quarterfinals of the knockout. So Peter Wizard, myself, Fangs of Fire, and Mr. Green are taking it easy for the next sort of week or so, while players from 5th place down to 12th place will play against each other in a best of 3 knockout. All the knockout rounds are best of 3. Um, and then the 4 winners from those matches then proceed to meet the top 4 players in the quarterfinals. So I'll show that a little bit later. But what I'll do is I'll show you a couple of sort of additional stats. I quickly calculated what the league table would kind of look like if you only took into account Hunter wins and Dracula wins. I did not calculate IDS because that would just take too long trying to separate all the results, so I didn't do it. That's something we can maybe look at for next year. Yeah, so you can see that the Peter was and myself at the top, but apart from that, there is a little bit of sort of mixing around with the rankings and things. Strider only, as an example, Strider only won 3 of his 8 Hunter games, but still finished in 6th place in total. So you can see how you don't have to be or have either have equal experience or equal skill or have equal good fortune on the 2 roles. You can maybe potentially specialize in one of the 2 roles, and then that will give you enough wins to progress. So if I switch over to the one for the Dracula wins, Strider's up there, joint third, with 6 wins out of 8 Dracula games. Very, very good stuff, right? So you have somebody like Peter Wizard who's just amazing on both roles, but then you can have somebody who's then someone like Strider or Geo who's having a lot more success on Dracula and can still manage to qualify, right? So even though this is a tournament ultimately about you have to try and command ability with both factions in order to qualify for the top 12 position, to qualify for the knockout. Sorry, you don't have to be necessarily equal on the 2 factions. You can dominate with one, and that might be enough. So you can see, out of the 12 players who made it into the knockout stages, all of them were in the top 12 for Dracula wins. I know there's some here that were equal on 4 wins, but then the Hunter wins was a little bit kind of more all over the place a little bit. Peter Wiz and I first and second at the top, Mr. Green at the top as well, but then you've also got a bit of things are sort of mixing around a little bit down here. So yeah, that is that. And then, oh yeah, I put this together. If you're colorblind, I am so sorry. I know green and red is a very nice combo to showcase this, but yeah, I realize if you're colorblind, this might not be a good idea. So I do apologize. But at least I've put the lettering in, so hopefully that helps. So this is just basically a little thing I put together for all the different players. The results of their matches starting off at the beginning of the league on the left, and then the final game of the league on the right. So you can see what sort of win and loss streaks that people went on. I think the highest win streak was from Snuffleupagus, 8 wins in a row between the middle of the first phase and middle of the third phase, more or less. Andrazot as well went on a nice winning run here, 5 wins. From the beginning of the third phase. Good stuff. So that's the thing, and this is something we've seen in previous leagues, but it's also really important here. Just because you have a really sort of bad time and struggle a bit in the first couple of phases, there's nothing stopping you from going on a good winning run and puts you in contention for the knockout places. All it took is maybe 1 win somewhere in here, and Andrazot can well be in the knockout phases now, right? So it also depends on who you play against, of course, but it's never over, right? who else? Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to pick up this apart too much, right? Because we can there's a lot of things, and everybody individually will be able to see the sort of the runs that they went on. There's something I just want to point out. Ariel, right? Ariel had a really good start to the tournament, then went on a bit of a losing streak, but then won 2 games crucially at the very end and secured the knockout place. It doesn't matter, right? You could just, as long as you just win your next game, that might be enough, right? Especially since it was so close in sort of that middle portion of the league. Just one win could easily take you up several places and then put you in a safe position. So yeah, really good stuff to have broken that losing streak just at the end there, and it was just enough. So yeah, I haven't got too much analysis. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but everyone individually can have a look and see how they got on. And then this is how the knockout phase or the knockout stage rather is going to look. So yeah, these are the 4 fixtures for the first round. So the way that the knockout stage has been devised is that, in theory, the number 1 and number 2 seed will be separated from each other until the final if they win all their games, obviously. And then the semi-final should be the top 4 seeds, first versus fourth, second versus third, if they win their quarterfinal games, and so on, right? So that's how it's going to work. So the higher position that a person got in the league, the easier run they have to the final, in theory, relatively speaking. So the first round matches that we've got are Skybreaker against Ariel, which has already been played, but I won't spoil the result. Snuffleupagus and Geo, Strider and Terminus, Quincy and Spencer. So those are the 4 matchups. So they've got just under a week once this video comes out to complete their games, and then it'll move on to the quarterfinals, and so on, so on, so on. So I think by the 15th of December or so, all of these games have been played. We're giving everybody plenty of time, 10, 11 days to play their best of 3 in each part of the knockout stage. So yeah, basically how it works, it's a best of 3. So the person who is the higher seeding gets to pick the role they want first. And then in the second game, the roles reverse. So you can't just stay on Dracula forever. If you really like Dracula, you can't stay on Dracula forever. So yeah, you play one game on one role, but the higher seed picks the role they want, and then it swaps. If somebody has won both of those games, then they just automatically progress into the next part of the competition. If it's 1-1, after those 2 games, then the person who has the higher IDS score across the 2 games is the one that decides. So it could end up, right, even if you have an example where the higher seed picks the role they want for the first game, if they don't perform so well and they maybe only win their game with a small margin of victory, then if for the third game they might not be the one picking their preferred role. It'll be the lower seeding player. It just depends. So yeah, the higher ranking or the higher seeding only gives you an advantage for your first game. You're not guaranteed the advantage for the third game if it gets to the third game. And then whoever wins the third match, if it goes to that tiebreaker, whoever wins that third game is through, and that's it. So it's going to be really interesting to see. I've never participated in a knockout tournament before. Some of these players have. I'm trying to think who. It will be people who are in the New Blood Championship. So Snuffleupagus, Geo, Fangs of Fire, Strider. I think they're the 5. Yeah, those are the 5 who are in the knockout part of the New Blood Championship. So they know what it's like. They've gone through it before. But someone like me or Pizza Wizard or Mr. Green, we've never done it. We've always played inside a league system. And it's a different mentality, I think, to it. I mean, you do have to win all your games, but the thing is, when you're playing inside a league, you can lose 1 game or maybe 2 games in a row. So if I go back to my win-loss streak, I lost 3 games in a row here, but it didn't matter a huge amount. I mean, it did. Obviously, if I won them, it'd be much better for me, but it didn't matter because I was still able to win the next 6 after that. But obviously in the knockout stage, if I lose 3 in a row, well, I'm definitely out at that point, right? I only have to lose 2 in a row and I'm out. So it gives a slightly different vibe to it. right? If you lose one, especially if you're the highest seed and you lose your first game, then you're under a lot of pressure. You have to then win the second one, and all it takes, and we've seen it in a lot of games, right? If they're really, and all the games have been really close between everybody in this tournament. All it takes is one bad combat, or one excellent use of consecrated ground or whatever, and then you suddenly lose. So then imagine that happens twice in a row, you're out, right? And it doesn't matter maybe what seeding you are. And I think honestly, if we're looking at everybody who's left in the tournament, everybody has enough skill to beat anybody else. If maybe some might need a little bit of luck, but all it takes is just the cards to fall a certain way, one really good early combat that takes Dracula's health down a lot, and then suddenly, you can have a lower seeding player beating a higher seeded player, right? So anybody I think can make it through. Um, Obviously, you'd like to think that the people who have the highest seeding have an advantage, but I would not be surprised if there are going to be upsets in this knockout stage. I don't know who, and I don't know in what stage it's going to be, but if everything goes what I would call plain sailing, and the highest seed wins every single match, and we end up with 1 and 2 in the final, and I don't think that's going to happen. I think somewhere along the line there's going to be a shock or two. So yeah, there's no safe matches at all. For me personally, I'm looking at it, and I'm kind of I'm not even thinking ahead to the semi-final or the final. I can only focus on my quarterfinal matchup. I said it all the way through the tournament. If you watch any of my own commentaries, I've always said one game at a time. I'm not going to try and think about, oh my god, who am I going to play in the final? Who am I going to play in the semi-final? I can't do that. And especially if I'm looking for me, it's either going to be Quincy or Spencer. Spencer and I have played against each other in a lot of tournaments, and I've beaten him and he's beaten me. So I won't let the seeding sort of skew that sort of the memories I've got of playing against Spencer. We played against each other a lot, and I know he's a good player. And Quincy as well. No, we know has a lot of experience. So that's quite for me personally. I won't talk about anybody else because everyone will have their own opinions about opponents and stuff. But for me, that's a really, really sticky sort of quarterfinal to have been given. But that's the way the table worked out. So that's who I'm going to have to play against. I don't know who yet because the games haven't been played. But I will try and watch Quincy playing against Spencer and try and see if I can get any sort of insider information and watch their styles of play and things if I'm able to. So yeah, for me personally, I can't think really far ahead. Who am I going to play in the semi-final? Who am I going to play in the final? I can only focus on the quarterfinal and just try and get through that, and then just see really. So yeah, for someone like me, the lowest number of games I can win to try and win the whole tournament, if I can do it, is 6. If I win 6 in a row, then I win the tournament. But it could be a maximum of 9 that I'll have to play if I end up losing and having to do some tiebreakers and things. So anywhere between 6 and 9 games in order to win the tournament. But I could easily just play 2 in the quarterfinal and get knocked out. So at least I'm guaranteed 2 more games in this tournament. So I've enjoyed, for me personally, hopefully I speak for everybody else, but for me personally, I really enjoyed playing in the tournament a lot. I did really miss playing in it last year, but it's just one of those things. So I really enjoyed playing it, and the games have all been great fun to either watch or to spectate or to play. So yeah, I can't wait to play more games of League of Dracula. And if I get knocked out in the quarterfinal, then I get knocked out in the quarterfinal, and that's just the way it goes. But I will try my very best to make it as far into the tournament as possible, as will everybody else who is still in the tournament, of course. So yeah, not really the most profound analysis, but I wanted to bring you the update anyway. And yeah, do check out any live streams or videos from myself or any of the other content creators who are recording games from the community. You can find all of their channel links in the description of the video, as well as the playlist of all the games I've been recorded and saved in there. There's Dracula perspectives, Hunter perspectives, third-person perspectives. So yeah, for me personally, I will always record my own gameplay, but as a normal video, not live. Um, if I'm recording somebody else's, then I'll do it as a live stream because you can then interact in with the live chat. You can obviously watch live streams back after the fact, of course. They're all in the playlist. But if you're able to catch a live stream when it's live, then it's great because then you can actually then talk to the people who are commentating. You can join in the banter. There are puns in the live stream chat. There are often meme discussions. There'll be strategy discussion. We've had recently a newer member of the community join who managed to catch all the live streams and was asking us questions about rules and strategies and things, and we were explaining everything as it was going along. So yeah, it's a really engaging way to sort of connect with the community. So yeah, do check out the live streams if you can. If you watch them after the fact, that's great too. Just leave a comment below if you want to. And yeah, my own games will always be recorded as normal videos. I haven't done any post-game analysis in this tournament just because I just simply haven't had the time or energy to. I've done a lot more sort of live streaming, and also then I'm admin, so I'm having to, alongside JB Philly and stuff, Luffagus, making sure that everything's functioning okay, inputting the results. Now it's in the knockout stages. The amount of work we have to do reduces considerably because there are just simply not as many games being played. But yeah, I haven't done any post game analysis this tournament. Just haven't had time to. I have recorded a couple of games for post game analysis, but I think maybe the time has passed. I probably won't get round to them. But it is what it is. Yeah, so basically, by Christmas, we will know who's in the final, and we will know unless anything goes wrong with scheduling and stuff, we will know who is the League of Dracula 2024 champion. Could it be myself or Pizza Wizard? We've won it before. I won in 2022. Pizza Wizard won last year. So will it be one of us, or will there be a new name in the history books? A new name on the trophy, the invisible imaginary trophy, the metaphorical trophy. We'll have to see. We'll have to find out. So yeah, as I said, not the most profound analysis, but just wanted to bring it to you anyway. People, feel free to leave comments below, especially if there are people here who are participating in the tournament. Feel free to leave comments below and anything interesting you've noticed in any of the sort of statistics I've thrown up. Oh yeah, very quickly before we go, let me just very quickly show you one other thing. So if I turn off that and turn on this, here we go. So a very quick sort of summary of the win rates. Right? I normally show this when we do our updates and stuff. So yeah, 144 games total across the entire league phase, 72 with the random opponents, and then 72 with it based on seeding. And the win rate between Hunters and Dracula is 56% in favor of Dracula. And the thing that I'm very surprised about is just how consistent the win rate has been across all the phases. Sometimes we've seen it before where we've had one phase where it's suddenly Hunters are favoured, and then it shifts back in Dracula's favour, and then back towards Hunters or something. But it's been pretty much the exact same win rate, bar one win more for Dracula in the very first phase. It's been the exact same win rate all the way through. This is not planned, by the way, in case anybody comes on and goes, "Ooh, you've planned that." Nope. That's just how the results all work out. So yeah, Dracula's had a slight advantage in all of the phases that have been played. It would be interesting to sort of really dig into this analysis after the tournament, looking at especially phase 3 and 4. Is that win rate between Huns and Dracula consistent across the whole league table, or if you look at say the top 3 groups of the league and the bottom 3 groups of the league in terms of how the opponents were distributed, do you see the same win rate, or do you see one which is more heavily towards Dracula, another one which is more heavily towards Hunters? I don't know. I'm shrugging. I know you can't see me, but I'm shrugging because I don't know what the answer is. But something we can do after the tournament is really delve into the figures and try and work out what it's telling us. But it's just been very consistent, slightly in favor of Dracula. For anybody who's watching, in the previous tournaments we've done, the very first league 2 years ago, there was a slight, by the end of the tournament, there was a slight advantage for Dracula. I think it's like 52%. And then during the next couple of tournaments that we did, the win rate increased for Hunters, but very small. It kind of went 52% for Dracula, then about 50-50, and then towards sort of 53% in the Hunter's favor. Now, with the Immortal update that happened earlier in the year, it shifted back towards Dracula. I'm not extremely surprised by this, just because the nature of the changes as such that they benefit Dracula. In case anybody doesn't know, the digital version of the game underwent a huge sort of update um, in the spring that removed a lot of bugs and things, but also removed a lot of contentious rulings that were made when the digital adaptation was made, rules corrections, all that sort of stuff. And there was no the intention of that update. And I know this because I help, I collaborate a little bit with Nomad Games in terms of, trying to help them to do, to do this update and try and communicate all the things that needed to be changed as much as possible. Um, and they said it to me, and I understand it from conversations with them, that the whole point of the update was not to try to balance the two factions. It was just to bring the digital edition much closer to the third and fourth, well, especially the fourth edition of the physical game. Um, and if by making it closer to the fourth edition in terms of how the app and the game functions, it means that one faction suddenly becomes stronger than the other. Okay, then as a community, when we go into tournaments and things, we can then do our own balancing, right? Especially if Dracula is the one who's got the higher win rate, because Dracula has a lot of mechanics that you can sort of play around with to reduce Dracula's strength. Rumor tokens and layers and power cards. If anyone doesn't know, in our tournaments, it's always with rumor tokens and layers and all the advanced rules turned on. If need be, if we feel that 56% is too high, then in future tournaments we can maybe tune down Dracula's strength a tiny bit. Maybe just reduce the strength of rumor tokens a tiny bit, or reduce the amount of influence he gets from Fury of Dracula a tiny bit. This is something as a community that we can discuss. But there are ways to tune Dracula's strength. Whereas the hunters, you can't really tune their strength using in-game mechanics. We'd have to do something inside the community in terms of limiting supplies and things. But then that becomes a little bit more cumbersome, right? Rather than just changing, the value of Dracula's rumor tokens or something. But I still think this is kind of interesting for a game that is so asymmetrical in its nature to have a win rate that is still fairly close. When you're looking at it across the 144 games, you're like, ooh, 63 to 81. That's quite a big difference. But then if you're looking at it in the individual little phases, it's only like basically you're only 2 games away from being 50-50, basically, right? 18-18. So you're actually 16-20, right? So it's pretty close, honestly. And I still feel the game is in a good spot. So, and yeah, and I think it helps out inside our community because we do all these live streams and videos and things. We're able to sort of pool a lot of resources together, and we can teach strategy to newer players and less experienced players much more easily. That learning curve for the hunters is reduced considerably. But I think with both factions, both hunters and Dracula, especially now with Dracula with the mortal update, the skill ceiling has increased, which I think makes the game way shouldn't say way more interesting because that sounds like it was boring before. It makes the game more interesting, but you just got that extra level of complexity on top, which ultimately will only affect the very, 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 very high level of games, right? The casual user of the digital app, or the less experienced players that we have in our community might not notice those things so much, right? But it really pushes the skill ceiling for the top level, which is great for both sides, which I think is great. So even though it's not exactly 50-50, I still feel it's relatively healthy. We'll add the knockout stage, Hunter and Dracula wins and see how it affects the statistics. If we're going by the assumption that the higher seeded player will always win their games, then the win rate for the knockout will be 50-50 because they'll win on Dracula, win on Hunters, and then they'll progress, right? But we'll see if that actually pans out that way, or if there are a lot of games with tiebreakers, then potentially the win rate between the Hunters and the Dracula there might be a bit of a disparity. We'll have to see. And ultimately, sometimes in the community, either on live streams or inside the Discord and stuff, I stir the pot a little bit and say, oh, Hunter's OP, Dracula's OP. But ultimately, I just look at the figures. And in all the tournaments we've ever played, the win rate has always been really close to 50-50. This is actually probably the one tournament with the biggest disparity between the two roles that we've ever had. I was saying, well, the difference is only 6% away from the average of 50-50. So that's not that bad really. And ultimately, just I want the statistics to tell us if one side is stronger than the other, and then we adapt based on it rather than just making assumptions. Um, so anyway, so yeah, those are the stats. Generally seeing that the games are really, really close. High, over 9 influence for Dracula at the end of games, even though he's losing half of them. What I will do after the tournament is go through all of the games where Dracula lost and see what the average influence value would be for that. And to see, if Dracula does lose the game, how much influence does he normally obtain? Because I'll give you a bit of an idea. I don't know why this is not like this on the Google Doc, but the HP thing's being separated. That's annoying my OCD. Never mind. Right, I'm going to stop the video because it's gone on for way too long already, and you're probably fed up of me. But anyway, that's the update. End of the league phase, and we will progress on to the knockout phase, which I'll show you one last time. There we go. So this is the route to the final. One of these 12 players will be the League of Dracula champion come Christmas. Who will it be? Get your predictions down below, maybe, and who you're rooting for. Yeah, take care, folks. Thank you very much for watching. And if anything from this 40-minute rambling was interesting to you, then feel free to let me know in the comments below. See you very soon, folks. Take care. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.